Hi, my name is Anya Pavel. I'm the author of The Garden of Stone Houses, and I'd like to welcome you to Season 10 of the Writing Community Chat Show. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. And please don't forget to subscribe to the Writing Community Chat Show's YouTube channel. And then if you like today's show, hit like and also comment in the comment section. Enjoy.
You're tuned into the Writing Community Chat Show, the live streaming YouTube podcast that brings you the stories of authors, screenwriters, and more. Indie or established, this show's for the community. We invite you to be a part of it. Head to thewritingcommunitychatshow.com for more info. The WCCS, together as one, we get it done.
Hello and welcome to this week's Writing Community Chat Show. Today we have a fantastic guest on. Coming up is Sophie Flynn, who is an author, and her latest book has come out very recently. And we'll find out about her road to writing, and we'll be chatting and answering questions about books and life, and answering all your amazing questions or possibly silly questions. We will find out who has won the Chris versus Chris book cover challenge, the very first one, and we'll find out just how we're getting on with the author poem challenge that Stephen J. Goals sent us last week, Chris. And I'm here with the awesome Chris Hooley, my co-host, who wishes he was watching the football game instead of being here, but unlucky. Guys, grab yourselves a drink, enjoy Friday night with us, and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. Hello, Chris Hooley. How's your week been?
Can I just set the record straight that you said on my behalf that I would rather be watching the football than be here?
I did.
That is not true. That is not true at all. I would much rather be here. Otherwise, I'd have just pulled a sickie, wouldn't I, and gone, Chris, sorry, I can't do it.
To be fair, let's ignore results. But this was pre-planned, and obviously you said England's game is on at this point, and you just said, "Oh, don't worry about it. We'll just do the show." And I thought, fair play to you.
Yeah, I mean,
had it been reversed, I probably would have gone to Chris for cancelling the show.
No, I mean, I've spent the week with Sophie's book and a few hours with the football. I'm going to find out the results anyway, so I'd much rather be here and having a good chat with you.
Would you rather the audience keep you informed of the results or say nothing?
No, like I said, I'm not bothered. I'd rather it just be completely focused on what's going on right now. If you've got anything to say, please let it be questions for Sophie or for us. And let's just pretend that that's not happening.
Fair enough. There you go, guys. As Chris said, if you've got questions about tonight's show, send them in. The format that we did last season, up to season 9, it's kind of gone out the window a little bit in a good way, that we're kind of just going out there and attacking it in a more fun and conversational based way. So your questions can come anytime through the show, for Sophie or for us in general. Writing based questions, life questions, or just silly questions as well. Send them in to us, and we'll get on with the show. So, Chris, the Chris versus Chris book cover challenge has been decided by Brandon, who we were doing the covers for in the first place. What were your thoughts?
I'm glad it was decided by him because it's his book. He knows what he wants. He has common sense as well. So I'm glad it's him that's decided who's going to be the winner, because the public were just too focused on the spear for my liking.
Right,
so
let's not give anything away. But
I'm not giving anything away, but I hope that it's a bit of a fairer decision. I mean, obviously, if you win, fair play. I'll be gutted, but we move on. But if I win, then
now the results are in, guys. For those that are watching right now, let us know in the chat who you voted for. Sorry, which book cover you voted for, which one you liked, and we'll play that very shortly. But before we do that, Chris, or should we play it later on in the show? What do you think?
Yeah, maybe later on. Keep them in suspense. We'll find out.
Okay.
Yeah.
But in terms of the poem challenge that Stephen J. Goals last week's guest gave us, how are you getting on with that? Yeah,
I've sent my poem in, tweaking with it for a little bit. Like, poetry is a lot harder than people think. I had the basic idea first, got it down first draft, and I think I did what a lot of authors would do in terms of, like, I overwrote the poem at first. Then I had to strip it back and strip it back and strip it back. And yeah, I'm I'm happy with what I sent. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing if it can beat you.
Well, Chris, to be honest with you, it was 4 lines. I've never written a poem before. I wrote 4 lines and I haven't stripped anything back or redrafted anything with 4 lines. How can you strip that back?
Yeah. I think I was a bit too liberal with the punctuation and extending the lines, and I was trying to really capture the image that I was trying to create, and yeah, just stripping it back made it so much better.
Nice. In regards to the book covers, Anya said, I voted for the ripped Viking because I think it's potential sales opportunity. Do you agree with that? Like having a kind of more, what's the word? I don't know. A more naked person on the cover would help sales, Chris?
I think it depends on obviously the book that you're trying to sell. I think if it was, full of sex and, fun things like that, then having a naked person on the front cover would work. But obviously speaking to Brandon about his book, it being very different, I don't think he was a fan of the tone that I went with that direction. But obviously at that moment, we kind of hadn't consulted him. We just kind of had to go with what was presented. So yeah, that's where the half-naked Viking came in.
Yeah. Jake says a sexual cover. That would have explained it better. Potentially, depending on the reader, of course. But there you go. So, Chris, I don't know. Would you like to introduce tonight's guest?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you've got a lot. Have you got the bit that scrolls underneath ready? Oh, there we go. I can just read that if I wanted to. No, but Sophie,
you could read that if you want to.
Yeah, good. No, but Sophie is a brilliant author. We're so excited that she's agreed to come on the show, and we can't wait to talk to her about If They Knew. It's a really interesting concept and such a brilliantly structured novel as well. Like from just a selfish point of view, I'm really intrigued to see how she sort of went about crafting this novel and bringing it together. Again, she's I've lost my mind. I was going to go along the lines of, this novel in particular reminds me of quite a few books I'm going to talk to her about on the show, and just see if they influenced how she went about it in any way, shape or form. But obviously you've mentioned that she is associated with Jericho Writers as well. This is her 3rd novel. So it's not her first time around the block. So hopefully she can give us some really good advice and everybody listening some great advice as well. And we can find out about this amazing book that she's written.
Absolutely. Well done, Chris. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sophie Flynn. Hello, Sophie.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's so weird hearing yourself described because you're never sure what someone's going to say.
Well, Chris did a fantastic job there, of course. How are you doing, Sophie? Thank you for joining us. I hope you're well.
Yeah, I'm good. It's very nice to be here. It's exciting. I'm just watching everyone comment, which is always very fun.
Yeah, as we said, guys, if you've got questions throughout, send them in and we'll try and tackle those as they come in. So thank you for joining us, Sophie. And obviously Chris said he's spent a week reading your book and he's very excited to talk to you about a lot of things. But first of all, can you let everyone know where you're coming from in the world?
Yeah, I'm in the Cotswolds, in a little town called Morton in Marsh, which, if you know, pretty place. I mean, it is pretty, but it's not like one of the really key pretty places. Like we're just up the road from Stow-on-the-Wold, which is where the Lord of the Rings door is. If you know, it's weirdly famous for that. So that's where we are. I
didn't know what a Lord of the Rings door was.
You know, so I actually don't really know, but we've got a door in the church, which apparently is something to do with Lord of the Rings. Was very. And lots of people go and visit it. I used to work in Stow and I'd go and write in the graveyard on my lunch break, and you'd get lots of tourists really eagerly snapping pictures of this door.
And you just sat in the graveyard writing. Yeah,
I know it sounds a bit emo, doesn't it? But that's what I did. I worked with another writer as well, and she used to do it as well sometimes, and we'd often see each other in the graveyard and just not talk and be like, I know what you're doing.
Wow. Was there a reason for that?
Well, so we did used to write in the library, and then we got told off for going in the library and not reading. And it's really expensive if you keep going and buying coffee in posh Cotswold coffee shops. So nice little graveyard, just half an hour writing on your lunch break. I found really helpful.
A few hobbits as well to look out at.
Some inspiration.
Yeah, brilliant. So, have you at any other kind of strange writing places?
I write anywhere really. I'm not very fussy. Like I used to be quite fussy. But I don't know where strange places. I write on my phone quite a lot. Like on my note, I can never get rid of having an iPhone ever because I use the Notes app more than anything in the world. And literally my entire life is on the Notes app. And if I'm stuck for time, I'll write straight into that because I don't always have my laptop with me and I have to move about places. So I write in the car a lot when my husband goes, because we have the dog with us most of the time. So when my husband goes into the shop, I'll be left in the car with the dog. So lots of my novels have been written in the car on my Notes app while my husband's getting food for dinner.
Whilst the dog is with you as well,
Yeah, not the most glamorous, but...
So how do you navigate that? Because like I've done it myself in the past, and then I've been writing a chapter, and then I've got like a shopping list, and then just random thoughts throughout the day, and then I'm looking through my notes going, I'm sure I wrote a chapter somewhere.
Oh, I'm really like, if I do it, as soon as I get to my laptop, I'll copy and paste it into Scrivener because I need to know how many words it is. Because I often write really quick on the Notes app and I'm pleasantly surprised. But then some days I'll have written what I think is like an entire chapter and you paste it in and it's like 300 words. So I just keep them in separate little bits. So if you go through my Notes app, you will see just like shopping list, and then the next note will just be some really dramatic scene of like a body being buried, which if anyone steals my phone, that will look very, very strange.
Yeah, especially what the shopping list compares to the murder scene.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, isn't it? And I was talking the other day about music and the influence writers have or has on writers, and some people write with music, some people don't. Some people can't write with lyrics, and there was some certain playlists that I used to listen to over and over, which actually ended up, the songs of that on the playlist ended up in the story.
Oh,
so
nice.
It got to the point where I took that away and was just like, piano music, that'll have to be the way. Has your shopping list ever influenced you in your writing?
Oh, do you know what? Actually, one of the book ideas I've got, which I'm not sure if I'm going to write or not, is about. It starts with a woman waiting for her husband to come out of the shop.
With a dog in the car.
Yeah, but he doesn't come out because he gets killed. So, but yeah, that's what happens a lot. Yeah, a lot of time waiting in the shop, waiting for the shops. But no, not had any shopping list novels.
So, Sophie, how do you decide what is a good idea for a novel and what just stays in the notes list?
I'm kind of in that process at the moment, and to be honest, like my third book's just come out, but it's all come out in quite quick succession. So last year I had my debut out, and then this year I've had 2 out. So I've not really had like a massive amount of time to think, is kind of how I feel. So all of the ideas I've had so far, I've just had them and known I wanted to write them. I haven't really done the thing of like, is it a good idea? Shall I do it? I've just been like, right, let's do it. And now I've had to have a bit of a break just because after writing 2 books in a year, I'm sure you guys probably write quite fast, but I found that a lot. I really struggled with it. So when I finished, I've had a real big break of a few months. And so the idea I'm working on now, I'm trying to debate whether it's a good idea or not. And I think sometimes it comes down to like whether you can describe it to people. Because If They Knew, I think, is the one that's been easiest to sum up as like what it's about. Keep Them Close was a little bit easy. And then I found my debut wasn't that easy. And that probably means it potentially wasn't the best idea. But, it's out there now. So I think that if you can tell someone what it's about and they go, oh, that sounds interesting, I suppose that's what makes it a good pitch.
So whilst we're on the topic of telling people what it's about, sorry, Chris, can we do that? Yeah.
Sorry, so what means
I confused everything there, didn't I?
Sorry, that was me jumping in. No, whilst we're on the topic of telling people what it's about and the elevator pitch, and it's just been referenced, obviously, can we have that now so we can, anyone who's watching can sort of get that feel for the book?
Yeah. So if They Knew.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the problems with having 2 books out within 4 months of each other is I can't seem to flip between the 2 of them, and I never know what anyone's talking about. But the pitch for If They Knew is it's an infertile couple who've been going through IVF for a number of years, and now at the point of adopting a little girl. And the opening scene is them being proved for the little girl, and she's going to come home in a week's time. And then that day, somebody turns up dead, which basically threatens the adoption. And then it's about what happens after that.
Wow. If you don't mind, Chris, I'll jump in with that question. What I wanted to know was, having released your debut book followed by 2 books very quickly in succession, do you feel like you had a big time to learn as a writer there, or do you kind of feel like you have to throw everything together very quickly in kind of your journey as a writer?
Yeah, I feel like I was writing my debut for quite a while. I mean, not that I always say it took me ages, but I think a lot of people would say that it wasn't that long. But it was a good like 4 or 5 years. So that one honestly just felt impossible to write. And I felt like I did so much learning with that one, because I don't really feel like it was the first book I wrote, but I don't really feel like the book that was published was anything like the first book I wrote. The plot, everything was completely different. And I feel like that was a good learning. And then these last two, I think I've learned a lot about how to write really fast and how to plot fast. But I still feel very, very much like a new writer. Like when someone says, oh, you're on your 3rd book, this is your 4th book now, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like I'm still kind of a debut.
I think it's really interesting. A lot of the people that have come on this show, whether they're very established and successful authors or not, a lot of the people have said 10, 15 books in, it feels like they're waiting to be caught out. I don't think any author has actually felt comfortable that they've made it in that sense. I think they're still trying to figure things out and work towards success or towards perfection in terms of writing. So I don't think that feeling is going to go away anytime soon for many writers, but you know, you got to keep working hard and keep learning.
Yeah.
So, Sophie, if we move on to if they knew, then in terms of asking, obviously, I'm not going to give anything away in terms of plot or anything, but I've got some structural questions. You break the perspectives down in different sections of the book. It kind of reminded me in some ways of Gone Girl, in that, not obviously the plot line or anything, but the way that you structured it. How did that come about, and why did that work for this novel?
I love Gone Girl, obviously everyone does, but yeah, it's the first novel I've actually done 2 perspectives from. With my debut, With All My Lies, I did originally have it from 2 perspectives, and I really like doing it, but just my editor took it on like that, and then quite late in the editing process said, I actually think you should get rid of the husband's perspective altogether. So I've always been keen to try and do that again, and I think especially with that story, because it was so much about the couple, I felt like it had to have his perspective, like hers wouldn't have been enough. And I wasn't sure if it was going to work or not, but I think because the story is quite like a personal one, like me and my husband are going through infertility, so I felt like I understand. I mean, I don't understand it completely, but I have that sort of perspective because I live with it. Whereas the person I was trying to write from before was like not a very nice man, and I think I found that harder. I'm not sure how authentic it was, because I don't have any experience of being an abusive husband, obviously. So this one felt a bit more natural, but I really enjoyed writing from 2 perspectives. And in the one I'm trying to write now, I'm trying to write from 3 or 4, which is more of a challenge. And I'm a bit worried about that.
So another question just on structure, in terms of like, how did you manage the time differences? So you've got some chapters where it's like now, and then it's, you know, previous and things like that. How did you navigate that? Because normally it didn't throw me off with If They Knew, but normally I'm like, where are we now? Like, are we in this space? Are we 10 years ago? Are we here? And sometimes keeping track can be quite difficult. But how did you sort of navigate that? Was it like a Post-it note thing?
No, I mean, I do everything on Scrivener. I don't know if you guys use Scrivener. I love it. I feel like I should work for them. I'm always banging on about it. So it basically allows you to like structure things so you can see folder by folder what time period you're in. And I really need that, because one of the things I'm really terrible for is like, it'll be Wednesday in chapter 1, and then an hour later it's Friday, and I have to go back and be like, where's the time gone? So every time I write now on the Scrivener, you can like name the titles. I will write like Saturday AM, Saturday PM, and like with the New York chapters, which are about 15 years ago, I would always title them as well. And I think I went back and had to redo it quite a lot, because I didn't know how. I knew at the start with If They Knew I wanted it over like a week or so, but with the New York chapters, I didn't really know how long it was going to be, and so I kind of had to be led by what I realistically thought the character would go through in that period. Which kind of helped. But yeah, definitely Scrivener to keep me organized, because I can't do like Post-it notes and stuff. I love the idea of being really creative and doing it all on the wall, but it just falls off.
Joanne says, I started doing this too. It helps you keep on track. So we've used ProWriting, Chris, and I think I've not noticed a timeline kind of feature there, but I don't use one personally, so I couldn't say the same. Sophie, I'd love to go back to when you mentioned that all these multiple timelines you were working with, at one point you were told to ditch one of them. I mean, how did that feel as an author at the time? If you felt that was the right thing to have in the book, and did you kind of just get along with what they suggested because of that's their job?
Yeah, I was always a bit ropey about those chapters. Like I just was never that sure about them. I thought it was probably where my writing was the weakest. And I'd rewritten them so many times, more so than the rest of the book. And and you just got it in your head where you're like, oh, I don't know, but. And then as soon as my editor said it, I was like, yeah, that's fine. Just get rid of it. And they actually, what I hadn't realised, my first instinct was, oh God, it's going to make the book really, really short. Because to me, it felt like such a big part because I spent so much time on it. But actually, it was probably like 6,000 words in total throughout the whole book. So it really wasn't very much at all. And they were giving away quite a big spoiler. So it made sense. But I'm not massively precious with edits. I think maybe I'm quite happy if someone says this is what you need to do. I'm like, okay, thank you. I just need advice.
Do you feel then that you could give advice to someone who wants to write with multiple sort of timelines? Because that's something I've never done, and I wouldn't have a clue how to approach that. Yeah,
I mean, I tend to go with that one. I think I went back and forth on it quite a lot. As in, sometimes I would write, I'm just going to write New York now. And I do a few chapters like that because they were kind of the easier ones because I knew in my head exactly what was going to happen. And it was a diary format, which I found much, much easier to write. So I kind of did those in sequence. And then Scrivener does help you move things about. So there was one chapter ends. I mean, this isn't a spoiler, but I finished the chapter and it was something like, I'm never going to have to hear the name. I think I'm never going to have to hear the name Heidi, or who the hell is Heidi? And then the next chapter, I had a diary entry. It was like, oh, I hate Heidi. And I was like, those things go really well together. Not because I designed them like that, because I went back after and did it. So I think don't worry too much about fitting it all together at the start, because you can just move it about at the end. And I think thinking of it like that is a little bit less intense than having to weave them all the way as you're writing it.
Fantastic. We've got a couple of questions in the chat, Chris. Shall I ask a couple?
Yeah, go for it.
I want to see if this works, because in the chat it doesn't show an emoji. No. Is this supposed to be sacred? And it's just a square box. Sorry, Joe, we can't see that. Hera says, what is the most psychologically horrifying thing that could happen to a person? Great question for Halo, of course. That's a pretty harsh question.
I don't know how to answer that.
We'll move on from that one.
So, Chris, while you're finding a question, I've got a question for Sophie. So, she, you put at the end of if they knew, sort of like I think I can't remember if it was acknowledgements, but I remember what it said, and that's what I'm going to sort of talk about. You said that this is the book where you put most of your sort of self into the novel. So, how did you sort of detach from writing the fictional characters and then from your own personal experience? Because I'm guessing, obviously, what you said before, that this was possibly somewhat therapeutic about writing a fictional, a fictional space of something that you had experienced yourself.
Yeah, it is quite hard. And I do think, even now that it's out, one of the things I find with it is people will message me that I know personally and be like, oh, I'm really sorry. I didn't know this, all the stuff that's happening to you. And I say to them, not all of it's happening to me. It's so much more dramatic than my life. But I went to New York when I was the same age as this person. I went and tried to be a musician, did all that stuff. And a lot of that, it was a long time ago. And I didn't meet someone who messed me up psychologically there. I just came home and had a normal life. So that was quite easy to separate. I think the stuff now, if I'm completely honest, and this is not helpful to say as a writer, when I was writing a lot of this, I was going through really quite a hard time. And I don't remember a lot of it. Is that kind of, I think I put, like, I was reading, someone said something to me about it the other day, so I reread a bit of it, and I thought, I don't remember writing that. And actually, it is quite raw and quite hard to read now. And I don't know if I had been going through, like, not a really difficult time, if I'd have been able to write it the way I did. So I'm not sure I did do a very good job of separating myself from it. But I do now, like, when I had it up on early review, I don't know if you guys know a site called NetGalley, which is what reviewers see before the general public do. NetGalley's really brutal. Like, all the reviews, like, you get really nice ones, but the most cutting reviews I've ever had are on NetGalley. And when this first went up on NetGalley, the reviews were really quite mean and really like, oh, she's just banging on about infertility. Like, I don't care. It's boring. Like, I can't relate to this. And that was hard to look at it and be like, that's not me. They're not critiquing me as a person. That's a character thing. They don't like the writing, which is fine. So I am like, there was like a day or two where I was like, oh God, this is really horrible. I wish I hadn't written about something that means so much to me. But I don't know, the more I talk about stuff like that, the more I'm just like, this is a book and this is me. But I probably don't separate it that well.
It's one thing that when you're writing anything that's kind of personal, just writing fictional, completely fictional, is something personal to you. So putting actual personal feelings into a story is really harsh to have criticism for. But then to be able to detach it like you've done and see it as a writing perspective is amazing. To take that in the right constructive way, perhaps. But it's really harsh. Certain things like Goodreads and NetGalley, classically harsh in certain areas. So something we have to put up with, I think.
Yeah,
I find it strange about NetGalley as well, because people get really excited and they request the books, and then some of them are just, it's like, hang on a minute, you were talking about them as if they're your friend 2 minutes ago, and now you're just slaving.
I mean, the biggest one I had this time, which just really baffled me, was they were like, I don't care about infertility. I don't want to read about infertility. And I was like, the literal opening line of the blurb says infertile couple. Like, it's obviously going to be about infertility. And I don't know if it's the people just see covers and get really excited and just download stuff, which I think like when you're having to buy it, you're probably not seeing as much as that. So I think that's maybe why NetGalley's a bit harsher, but
I'm pretty sure that they're the same sort of people that left a review for one of our previous guests. I can't remember the person, but they left a 1-star review for the book because the packaging was damaged when it arrived. And it's like, come on, people, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Think about it.
But I love I know Chris has got a bit of a link to your musical background days, which you just referred to, obviously, with If They Knew and the character. Chris, do you want to make that connection now? Maybe it might be a good time.
Will. Sophie, I do some Instagram stalking for our guests, and for the past 2 guests, it's been impossible. In fact, we didn't do it with Steve, right? No, we didn't. So
no. Even J. Gold's lived in Thailand in the middle of nowhere, and he doesn't speak to anyone. He just publishes his work.
So Will Carver's was absolutely clinical. Like, every post was sequentially amazing and beautiful. The one before didn't have Instagram. So you're the first one this season we've been able to Insta stalk. And there's a picture here. So can you tell us a little bit more about this? Because it's you with a guitar on stage, and we'd like to know a bit more if you're right to talk about it.
Yeah, so that's me in New York. So I went in my 3rd year of uni. We could basically, our uni was like this wacky liberal arts place. And in the first term of the 3rd year, everyone had to just go and do something off site. So I'm quite like I was definitely like a structured person then, and I am still now. And I didn't want to just like go and do something on my own. I wanted to have some sort of like someone telling me what to do. So I went and I got a scholarship to Sarah Lawrence College in New York to study music, but you had to study another thing. So I studied music and poetry. I'm so bad at poetry. I thought it would help me write songs, and it was just embarrassing. So I kind of took my guitar and went and tried to play lots of gigs, and I had quite a nice time, and also quite an odd time. It's not quite like you see on the movies. My version of being in New York, but it was good. It was very fun.
Well, that's a very brave thing to do, and often authors are quite recluse, and that's a very open thing to do. So it's obviously a good experience either way. But if you had the choice between being a singer and an author, which path would you take?
Oh, definitely an author. I found it really depressing. I think what I realized about it was that I wasn't like, I loved writing songs, but I loved writing the lyrics. And I remember like standing in like pubs in Warwickshire, which where I was living after uni, and like singing these songs, which I thought I'd put my like heart and soul into, and them just not caring at all unless you were doing some sort of cover. And I thought, but they're not listening to the words. And I realized it was the words I really loved. And actually going out and like gigging and being in like pubs full of shouty men, and I didn't enjoy any of that. I enjoyed it at uni because I lived with a few friends who were musicians we'd go out and gig together, and that was really fun. And then suddenly I was on my own and I was like, I don't think I actually enjoy this at all. So definitely I'm definitely more suited to being an author.
Anya's got a question here, and she says, what's the weirdest thing you saw in New York? That place is delightfully and sometimes scarily odd.
Oh God, I'm trying to think now. So many weird things. I mean, Sarah Lawrence is a weird place as a whole. It's one of the most like expensive colleges in New York, but it's like really, really posh liberal arts. So we had lots of like famous people's kids. Like one of the people in my poetry class was, I think, John Irving's son. Wow. So it was lots of lots of people like that. I'm trying to think of the weirdest thing I saw. And my mind's gone completely blank, but lots of very odd people dressed up on subways and the naked cowboy, which everybody's seen. But yeah, all sorts of bizarre things. I was there for 4 months, so 4 months with no money. So it was an interesting, sort of different side of New York.
Amazing. Chris, shall we play the book trailer and then Brandon's reveal?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, it's halfway point.
Do that? So. We'll have a little, guys, if you want a drink, get it now, but also listen to the advert we're going to play and Brandon's reveal coming up straight after this. So a couple of minutes and we'll be back. Hello and welcome to this week's book promotion feature from the WCCS. Today's book promotion is nobody. Nobody took the book promotion, so we don't have one. Although I do have a brilliant picture of Chris Hooley's Death, Just Grin and Bear It on the screen there. So go and check that out if you dare, or if you have not already read it. And just support in that sense. But this is a promotion feature that you could be promoting your book on in the middle of the show. So go and check it out and just email us at thewritingcommunitychatshow@gmail.com or check out the website, thewritingcommunitychatshow.com. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Brandon Morehouse. I'm the author of the New Age of God series. First, I want to say thank you to both of the Chris's for all their hard work on redoing this cover art. I really think it will take the story from here to here. All of the cover art was amazing to look at, and I had a chance to work with both Chris's, and they were both a pleasure to work with. That being said, I do have to pick a winner. So, given that the story takes place in modern day and its main base is Chicago, I'm going to have to go with Chris Hooley's on both of his books 1 and 2 cover art. Now, I do think we do have a little bit of work to tie it together to make it more cohesive, but I'm going to have to pick those. A surprise that I have for Agate is that I've got some novellas that are coming out based on that storyline, and I want to use both of your options for book 2 as the cover art for those. So you get 2 books versus Chris's 2 also. So you're both winners. I'm excited to see where it goes. So congratulations.
So there you go, guys. Chris Hooley, the first Chris versus Chris challenge winner.
Yeah, the first of many.
How do you feel, Chris?
I feel great, man. I think this is going to be a bit of a roll. I feel like it's going to be, I'm going to win the first couple, hopefully, and then you'll have to claw something back during halfway through season 10.
I'm speechless. Well done, Chris. Fantastic effort, and Brandon's happy there. And of course, that's a challenge that we did for Brandon, and it's ongoing each month. So you guys can get in touch if you want to take part in that. And we'll continue to work with Brandon until he's very happy with what he's got. And of course, thank you guys for voting on Twitter. The polls were all in my favor, but you know, like a Trump, thing, it was rigged that way. No, sorry, Chris.
Like a Trump thing, but Chris, I think obviously Sophie having written poetry in the past and being a great author, maybe she could give you some tips to help you for Chris versus Chris part 2.
This is what I'm hoping, because Sophie, last week, Stephen J. Golds was on the show, and he writes alongside his writing. He does poetry, and he gave us a challenge, which was 4 lines of poetry, and we've got 2 weeks to get that submitted. So, even though you said you weren't that good at poetry, perhaps that was being modest. Do you have any tips for us for poetry?
No, honestly, like I can't even tell you how terrible I am. Like I just seem to go, like when I write normal stuff, I'm just like genre. I'm really happy being like thriller and not clever. And when I try and write poetry, I'm not sure who I'm trying to be, but it's some like really, really clever, really literary, like old man. And I like actually, if I read back the stuff I wrote in New York, I'm like, I'm so embarrassed that I used to sit in a class with actual talented people and think that was poetry. No, I've no tips. I'm awful. Don't listen to me.
There you go. Can you give Chris Hooley some tips, please? That was a bad joke. Anyway, yeah. So well done, Chris. Yeah, fantastic. And thank you, Brandon, for taking us on and having faith in us and love doing that challenge. So I look forward to the next one and hope you get what you want from those books. Maybe,
Chris. Obviously, Steve and Jay Golds gave us the next Chris versus Chris. Maybe Sophie could have a little think between now and the end of the show and give us the one after that. Now, it could be anything. Obviously, we've had a book cover design task. We've had writing poetry. It could just be, maybe it is who can do a supermarket sweep in the quickest amount of time, get the items or whatever. Just like your husband when you're waiting for him in the car.
Sophie's shopping list, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It could be anything. But yeah, maybe have a little think between now and the end of the show. And
okay, yeah. I'll try.
That'd be funny. So, Sophie, if we can ask this question, because the show used to start this way, but we're middle of it anyway, but we'll go back. How did you start writing? What for you was the inspiration, and how did you take that first step?
Well, so I was obviously a failed musician, and I got me and my husband met at uni and both really creative and just being like happy students down in Cornwall, and then came back to the real world and had to get like real jobs. And for a few years, like I was fine. I thought, I'm just a grown up now. And I think it was when I was about 25 and I was working for the police in the press office. So writing all the press releases about crimes and stuff, which was very fun in some ways, but obviously very boring in that you can't actually write anything fun about the crimes. You have to take a really fun story and turn it into something really boring. And I remember just sitting at my desk being like, is this my life? Like, am I honestly not going to do anything creative anymore? Like, I thought like, I really, really want to write. But I didn't really know what to do. And there was a local creative writing class, which I went to, which was really good. I really enjoyed it. And then because I really like structure, as I said earlier, I wasn't happy. Just like, I did not have the confidence to be like, oh, I'll just try writing a book, or like, I didn't know anyone who wrote books, or like the idea that normal people could be authors. I was like, that doesn't feel like a thing that I know. So I did a creative writing MA at Oxford Brookes, which has got me in a lot of student debt, but it was the first year they allowed postgraduate loans, which is why I did it. So I used to go to Oxford from Stratford-upon-Avon after work once a week, which is really a long way and very, very stressful. So that's kind of how I started, and I'd had the idea for All My Lies already, and I wrote a lot of it on that course, but I wasn't very good at the course either. Like I'm going back to the uni, I think in a few weeks, to go and give talks to the students, and I've been before, and now my lecturer introduces me as like, we always knew she had something special. 100% they did not. Like, I was not top of the class, I was definitely bottom of it. So yeah, it was, I'm really glad I did it, because I wouldn't have known what else to do. Like now I'm so like in the writing world, like things like you guys are doing and things like we do at Jericho at work, like there's so much you can do for free, but I just had no idea where to start. So for me, an MA was pretty much, I think, the only way I'd have done it, because I didn't even know what to Google, which sounds really silly, but I wouldn't have known there was like writing podcasts and writing communities. It just, I was so out of that world. That was really the only way in for me.
Amazing. Brilliant story.
What sort of things did you have to write whilst on the MA, Sophie? Because I've done one recently, and some of the things that I had to come out with and actually presented, I'm embarrassed to say it now, some of the things.
Oh, really? Yeah. So we was very loose. We were basically just we had to hand in like 4,500 words of creative every term, and 1,500 words of the essay. So I just always did chapters of all my lies. So I felt like I got good at writing, but really bad at plotting. Like I had no idea how to plot a story. Even when I left, there was nothing about like structuring a story, or I could write like snippets of well-written things, but none of it made sense when you put it together at all.
And what were those like sessions like in terms of when you've submitted that work and you're waiting for like, I don't know how many people in your group, but let's just say like 10 or 12 people to get back to you on your writing. Like, how was that whole process in terms of them delivering that feedback to you and you going, these are going to have to read this bit?
I'm just trying to think. So it was quite different every term, but the term I remember we got the most feedback. We had like different tutors come in, and they were all quite like well-regarded people. I think mine was Sarah Hillary, and I can't remember the other one. It might have been Kate Clancy. Lots of people like that. And they had to read 1,500 words of what you'd written, and they would then feed back to you, but in front of the whole class. It was horrible. It was really helpful because you got to hear everyone else's feedback, but oh my God, like hearing the stuff they were saying to everyone, and you just sat there in a class of like, I think there was probably about 15 of us, was very, very stressful. And you often felt like, I think it was Sarah Hillary read mine. It might not have been actually, but I remember her just being like, this makes no sense. Like I've literally no idea what's going on. And it's because the passage was one that I'd really got into my head about this like show don't tell, and I did it to the point where I was like, I can't say it's 6 p.m, so I'll just be like, the big hand chased the little hand as it met. Nonsense. And she was reading it and I was like, I get what she means now, but like I'd read it on paper and been like, this is fine, this makes complete sense that it's 6 o'clock, and then looking at everyone around the class, I was like, yeah. So it was quite hard sometimes, like hearing that feedback. And the first term, I remember the first thing I submitted, my tutor said, this is in line for a distinction. You just need to clear up these things. So I did that. And then I got a pass, like a really low pass. And I never got a distinction again through the whole course. So for the first few terms, I found it hard because in my head, I thought, he said I was a good writer. I probably am. And then I just never got good marks. And once I'd kind of started to be okay with that and just been like, well, I'll just not worry about getting a distinction, it's not going to happen. I think that's when I got more out of it. But the first few terms I was very harsh on myself and really embarrassed when I didn't do well.
Yeah, I mean, I feel exactly the same there, to be honest. It seems like a bit of a parallel. But how do you go from that like feeling of, oh God, I don't know if I feel comfortable about being a writer, to then going and just bashing out 3 novels and just them all?
Honestly, a huge part of it for me was in the second year of my MA in the summer. They posted about, have you heard of Swanwick Writers Summer School? It's a writers summer school up in Derbyshire, and if you were between 18 and 30, you could apply for a place for £100 for the week. So I applied for it thinking like I'd never get it, and I got it. And still I was like, can I really spend like 6 days with a load of writers? I just won't fit in at all. But I did go, and I met 3 of my like very best friends there now. And one of them, Janelle, she basically was exactly like me. Like we were the same age. She was a singer. She was about to get married to a man called Tom. Like she worked in PR. I was still doing like PR stuff for the police. And she was just she seemed to me so confident, and she wrote for loads of like literary magazines, and she just wrote lots of short stories and stuff like that. And she really inspired me to just try putting stuff out there. And I did. And then I did get like a fair bit of it published. And she's just one of these super inspirational people who would just be like, of course you can do it. And so I went from feeling like this is a very gated thing that I don't belong in, to like being part of a big community and like knowing all these writers from this summer school and authors coming in who had been there a few years before. And it just felt like the world opened up to me. I mean, I definitely still had lots and lots and lots of crisis of confidence, but that for me, I do think really did, like, it sounds really dramatic, but it did change my life. Like I'd have never paid to go on something like that. I didn't have enough money, and I'd never met people like that. So I think that's a big thing for me.
So how did you go from obviously that experience and still writing for the police and the press to then working obviously in the role that you're in now with the Jericho Writers and stuff?
So I moved jobs quite a lot. So I worked at the police, and then I worked at a creative agency as like a comms manager, and then I worked for a cybersecurity company, worst job of my life, as a marketing manager. And then I saw a job at Jericho, and I'd heard of Jericho Writers because I'd used their synopsis builder online, and I saw it come up as a marketing manager, and it was in Oxford, which I'm not too far away from Oxford. And I thought that can't be a real job. Like, all of those jobs are in London. Like, I just thought I don't live anywhere that's useful for anything like that. So I applied for it, and I think I got a call from the CEO at the time within like a day, being quite excited because I had a marketing background, because they were employing a lot of people who were writers but weren't necessarily in another job at the same time, like with the background, whereas I'd done a lot of marketing by then. So yeah, I ended up there almost 3 years ago. And I'm the head of marketing with a really lovely little marketing team. And it's really nice. Like, I don't get to do, I'm not like the fun side of it. I don't do all the tutoring and the editorial. I do the marketing, but it's still nice to be in like the writing world.
The Jericho Writers posted a blog once, and that was the most fun thing I've seen online that had about our show that wasn't biased. Do you know what I mean? Because we were always promoting the show and posting things and marketing ourselves. But Jericho Writers had a blog, and it was the 22 best writing podcasts, and we were in that blog.
Oh, that's great.
I was over the moon when I read that. So
that's lovely.
a lot of praise for that website, and definitely check it out. But for people who don't know about Jericho Writers, Sophie, can you let them know what it's about?
Yeah, so we're based in Oxford, but we've actually got people all over the country and in other countries. And we basically just sell lots of different things, anything that a writer could want. So I spend a lot of time on our premium membership service, which is basically a paid for community where you get lots of videos and tutorials. Like, the owner, Harry Bingham, is an author. He set it up, and he'll do a lot of stuff like critique people's opening pages. You get like free query review services like that. We've got an agent match system, which we basically call like a dating profile thing, but for agents. So you can just go on and look who you're finding. But we do loads of free stuff as well. Like, we've got a writing community, like an online forum. We do an enormous amount of blogs, hundreds and hundreds of them, which are really, really helpful for people, and offer lots of free services, and then do live events and editorial services. So do you know what? I listened to Katie Kahn from the Novelry, who's similar to us the other day. She described what the Novelry was, and she has like the most eloquent, perfect pitch. And I don't have that for Jericho. I should, as the head of marketing. But we just do lots and lots. And it basically, anything that a writer can want, we will do it in some format. Fantastic. And nearly all of us are writers as well. So that's why it's such a nice company to be part of. Like, even if they're not published, everyone is writing. So we do, like, we've been doing Nano over November, setting up writing sprints, and the two people who are running it, like, they've been writing their novels alongside all our members. So it's a really nice company.
Yeah, I love that. I love the prestige as well. That's like, I was telling people in work today, I've got Sophie Flynn coming on, and they were like, ooh, and I was like, yeah, she worked at Jericho Writers, and they were like, oh. And it's like, do you know what that is? And they're like, no, but it sounds amazing.
That's funny.
So if we could go to Jericho Writers, and if you could change one thing and implement one thing this year, what would it be that you would change?
At Jericho? Oh, I won't give you the really boring answer of behind the scenes stuff. I think just more people finding us. Like, we do so much work. There's so much. I think people, because we do, obviously we're a company, so there's lots of paid for services, but the free stuff you get is huge. And like, when I see people online being like, oh, I just wish I could get some help with my query letter and stuff like that, like, the amount of stuff you can get by joining for free, and people on the community, like, I can see you guys have got an amazing community, and it's that kind of stuff as well. Like, not everyone is going to be able to afford to get a beta read, and that, like, you shouldn't have to. And that's one of the big things we try and do, is bring people together so that they can do that for each other, and like access to literary agents and stuff like that. It's all that kind of the stuff that I wish I'd known of. Like, it shouldn't be this kind of big secret that you can only get into if you've got like £6,000 to do an MA, which I didn't have, but my loans did. And I think we're trying to do that, really. So the more people that can find us, the better. which is why we write so many blogs, because that's how everyone finds us.
It's fantastic. Well, if you want to get more awareness out there, you can definitely sponsor a podcast.
I was thinking that would be fun. That would be really fun.
No, but you're absolutely right. One thing that I tried to do that actually cost me a couple of reviews down was the fact that I did everything myself because I couldn't afford to go out there and do the things properly. So something like this is an incredible asset for the writing community. And I think the more things like this that are out there, the want to help writers helping writers is absolutely wonderful. Really good. One question, Chris, before we move on to the random ones at the end. I've got one question, which is a review on your book, If They Knew. And I want to ask a question off the back of that. That question is, my favorite thing about this book, it's not a question, this is a review. I'll ask the question at the end. My favorite thing about this book, though, is the complexity of the characters. I found them both compelling and multifaceted in equal measure. For me, this book operates truly in the grey, and I felt you could fall on either side of almost any of the main characters on any given moment, which really kept it interesting. A stunning thriller that you really must read. That was a fantastic 5-star review. And what I want to know is, are you very aware that when you write, you are writing complex characters? And if you are, what advice do you have that someone might be struggling with character development?
I think it's something I do put a lot of effort into, because the books I really, really love are the ones where you don't quite know. Like, it's not as easy to say this person's the baddie and this person's the goodie. And I think that's so true to real life. And like, one of the authors I really love, Gillian McAllister, like, so many of her novels are just about that. What would you do? That moral dilemma. And you can't really have that sense of, oh my God, I really feel for these people. I really don't know what I would do, unless you think that they're real people. So I do spend a lot of time on that and just kind of trying to map out, like, what would they do, and being very much guided by, the plot should be guided by what I think the characters would do. That's how I do it. Like, I will always try and plot, but I have to have well-rounded characters, because if what I did a lot in my first book before the edits, was I just wanted things to happen. I was like, well, they're going to go here now. And so it never really felt that real, because it was like, well, why are they going there? And it's like, unless you've got people that you know really well would act in a certain way, I think that's when people get frustrated with that thing of like, oh, they never act like that. And I think it's just not knowing your characters well enough if you just want them to do things because it helps you for them to suddenly fly to Greece. You just make them do it. So yeah, I think just thinking about like, why would that person do that? And like, one of the tips someone gave me a long time ago, which I found really helpful, was like, what is a belief that this character has? How did they get it? And show 3 times that reinforce it throughout the book. So like, if they believe they're worthless, like, what's the first time that they encountered that view? And then 3 parts of their story which reinforce that view about themselves each time. So you're never just saying like, this person has no self-worth. It's like that feeling will have come from somewhere, and there will be multiple experiences in their lives. And then if you use whatever that belief it is about themselves, that's what they have to overcome in order to resolve the story. Really buy into the fact that it's going to be difficult for them to, like, if they've got no self-worth, they're not going to suddenly just let someone in if that's what needs to resolve the story. So you're going to understand, oh, well, they're not going to just tell that man they love them because you've seen 3 times that when they were a kid, when they told someone they loved them, they left, and then you've seen it again and again. So I always try and think of that and try and spot it in other books as well.
Fantastic.
So Sophie, I was going to ask about, obviously I'm trying not to give any spoilers away. Somebody dies in this book, which is not necessarily, I don't think it's a massive spoiler, but how did that come about, that idea of that person and that character? Because like, there's loads of things going through my mind, and after I finished it, I was still thinking about that whole situation. So I mean, I sound very cryptic right now.
It's really hard,
yeah, I'm not trying to give anything away. So.
How do I answer that? I think like whoever like has the thing happen to them in any of the books, someone dies in all my books, so that's not a spoiler. I try and make them a real person and I never just want there to just be like a body that's just a random thing. So I think it's thinking about that and like what would have happened to them, and remembering that even like bad people or people that you perceive as bad, like they've got a whole family and a whole life behind it that leads up to it. So I always try and put a lot into the people that are dead as well.
Look after the dead people.
Yeah.
Right. What we're going to do is we're going to move on to the very final part of the show. We've only got 5 minutes left. So I'll ask, if you've got questions, guys, post them in the comments right now, and we'll ask our staple questions and try and squeeze them in. So, Sophie, if you could take any character from the world of fiction and throw that either into one of your books or take that character on the day out, what character would you choose and why?
Oh my God, I'm so bad with questions. My mind goes completely blank.
This could be a character from TV, film, or literature in terms of books. So any character at all.
This is such like a basic person answer, but my absolute favorite character is Holly Golightly from Breakfast at Tiffany's. But the movie, because I didn't really like the book, I just find her fascinating, and I think she's such like you just want to be her friend and you want to protect her. And like with her, like going back to like character development, like you see the reasons, like at the start, I think that's so clever because she's just this kind of like, really rich airhead socialite. And then the more it goes on, you see why she believes she should be like that. And you keep seeing it reinforced. And then at the end, like having to let, I've forgotten his name, the one she calls Fred, let him in, like she'll have to drop that pretense, and you know that she can't drop that pretense because you've seen all the times when she's had to build it up. So I just love her. I watch that film all the time. The first time I watched it, the morning I was due to leave New York, I woke up at 5 a.m. My flight wasn't till like 11, and I had Netflix, and I just sat and watched it at 5 a.m. So to me, it's like my real like heartfelt film. It's the first time I'd seen it, and since then I must have watched it 30 times.
Love that. So I'm going to ask a question that obviously draws on If They Knew a little bit. If you could take any novel that is from just one perspective and offer an alternative perspective from another character within the novel, which novel would you choose and why?
Nice.
Oh my God. You ask the hardest questions. I'm looking at my many bookshelves behind me. Trying to think of anything. I've read so many proofs lately, they're not actually out, and I'm trying to think of all the different names. You might have to come back to me while I think on it.
Yeah, but I'll give you another one then that is a fatal question why you maybe think of an answer. It is, if you, this is going to be equally as difficult. I should have moved. If you could change the ending to any novel that you've read, again, which novel would you change the ending to and why?
Can I do a TV show instead?
Yeah, you can do that.
I honestly read about 2 or 3 books a week, and yet when someone asks me about them, my mind goes blank. So I was looking at this.
TV, film, or books, anything like that at all. That's fine.
Well, someone said in the thing, what show or book had the worst ending, and I've just done a course not about this, but I mentioned it. The Game of Thrones ending with Daenerys, yes. And again, that's all about like cause and effect of character development. It's like, you saw her do something which you had no proof that she would ever do as a person. And it's like that to me is when someone's gone, I just want this to happen. Yeah. And the audience is going, but why would she do that? Like if you'd been shown something that triggered that reaction in her, I think that people would have felt differently. But just being shown this character who you love and you've 100% bought into their moral values, and then those things just disappear when they want a different plot. I just think it was the worst ending. It really annoyed me. But it is very good. If you watch it and think about cause and effect, it's like, what if you watch it and it annoys you? Why is it annoying you so much? And what would they have had to shown to make it less annoying? I think that really helps with writing.
Brandon says, don't say War of the Worlds. I'm looking at you, Agate. And a lot of people have said Game of Thrones previously. And I really feel like with TV or maybe film, but more TV endings, they have, I guess film as well, a very easy way out of an ending. Whereas when you're writing a novel, you have to be very specific and make the footsteps match the path, because there are so many TV endings that just go haywire like that. And I just think it's a cheap way out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's tough. Yeah.
So Sophie, the final staple question that we have, and obviously we've got about a minute or so left, but I think we can run over slightly, is what does success look like to you as an author? So, you know, I used to phrase it a lot. more
Just do it,
morbid than
Chris.
that.
Just do it.
Yeah, I used to say, you're on your deathbed, you're looking back at your writing career. What does success look like to you?
More morbid. I like it.
Yeah.
I think that's such a good question because, like, I speak to so many writers and so many of them feel like a massive failure. And I haven't sold as many books as a lot of my friends. Like, I haven't had these big, shiny, like 30, 40K deals, and nowhere near that. But I think I feel more successful than a lot of other people have said, because I measure it against, like, I definitely don't measure it against book sales, because that would be a waste of time. But, like, I try and think about, like, what writing's brought to my life, and for me it's changed my friendships, like I said earlier, like my best friends, because I met them through writing, like doing stuff like this, like my job, like having people tell me that something I've written means something to them. Like I would love to sell more books so that I could write books full time, but that isn't the sole thing for me. If I wrote books full time and actually people just read them, threw them away and never thought about them again, that wouldn't feel like success. So I guess it's just, I saw this really lovely quote the other day about living a literary life, which is very like pompous and not me, but it was really nice in the way it was talking about what writing brought to your life, about being around books and being around creative people. And even if I don't sell any books the next year, like that will still be my life. So I think that to me is success.
Yeah, it's nice. It's wonderful to have those sort of goals. And I'm sure with the way your books are going and the reviews you're getting, things will build in that sense anyway, and just keep doing what you're doing, and of course the fellowship will build.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Thank you.
Definitely. Chris, any more questions before we get on to maybe see if there's any more in the chat? We're running out of time.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I don't want to put you under pressure, Sophie, but I'm going to need an answer to the opposite perspective element.
So my brain's just not working at all with it.
And obviously, a Chris versus Chris challenge would be great as well. I mean, that might be somewhat easier than the really difficult question that I asked you.
Okay. So we're talking about, do you know what? My husband, because he can hear me panicking upstairs, he's texted me. And
Yes.
that's real support, isn't it? I thought I saw him texting me and I was like, why is he texting me? He said he would change Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy to be from Zaphod Beeblebrock's perspective.
Oh, yes. That would be an awesome book. That is a great answer, Sophie.
There we go. He's saved me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie's husband. Well done. That's a great answer.
You can hear scratching, by the way. It's my dog trying to get it.
It's not your husband.
Husband saved you. Your dog's trying to save you.
So thank you very much, Sophie. But before we do wrap this up, finally, where can people find out more about you and where can they get your books from?
So this is awful to admit, seeing as I do work in marketing, but you can go on my website, but I haven't put my new book on it yet because I'm really behind. The place where I do most of my stuff is probably on Twitter. So I think I'm at Sophie L. Flynn, but sophieflynn.com is also my website, which I will update anytime soon.
At some point.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone that's tuned in. We appreciate every single one of you that does that and leaves a comment and likes and thumbs up, all that good stuff. If you're listening back on the podcast, thank you so much as well. It means the world to us, and we hope you're enjoying season 10. If you have any questions or challenges for Chris and Chris, send them in to us on email and to take advantage of the book promotion and all that good stuff as well. Thank you from us, and we'll see you next week. Please look after yourselves. Bye-bye, guys.